Here's a sample episode of Roadkill Extra that shows up every single weekday at MotorTrendOnDemand.com. We've got outtakes, question and answer sessions, behind the scenes stuff, tech tips, all sorts of junk related to roadkill. Check it out every weekday at MotorTrend On Demand. Freiburger here, ready to do one of my favorite things, which is the Junkyard Prowl. What I'm going to give you on this particular Roadkill Extra is Junkyard Free Association. This will just be mind barf from what I think when I see various cars here at Colorado Auto Parts in Englewood, Colorado. Like, for example, this right here. Now, this is, I'm going to call 62 or 3 Ford Ranchero. Let's see what this claims right here. I am correct. It is a 63 Ford Falcon Ranchero. What this reminds me of is when they first came out with these cars, I think 1961 or 2, they gave one away to Ohio George Montgomery when he won the U.S. Nationals. The NHRA gave it to him for winning the gasser class, and he had one. It was light blue, it was lettered on the side with the NHRA win and everything. Maybe it was white, I could be wrong. I've mostly seen black and white photos of it. But he had that car forever and just sold it like 5 or 6 years ago. It was really neat looking through the Hot Rod archives at all of that old stuff when they used to give away like brand new engines to racers from the OEs and brand new cars like that. Okay, cool Ford truck. I think this is a 67. This is what they call a bump side. In 73, the Ford trucks changed and they look really similar to this, but instead of having a bump right here, they are concave, this being convex. So that's a bump side, and the later ones from 73 on up are called dent sides. This looks like it was a 63 or 4 Biscayne or Bel Air or Impala, which, by the way, those 3 cars are the same body, different trim levels. Biscayne, as in Key Biscayne, Florida, is the lowest level trim that they had on these Chevy full-size cars at the time. Then there was the Bel Air, then there was the Impala. And if I look at the taillights real quick, I can tell you that this particular one is a 63. Oh, this is a Studebaker truck. A lot of people know Studebakers for one of 2 vehicles. Either the really weird like 50 Stud that's called a bullet nose that has one big round emblem in the middle between the 2 headlights. It's crazy looking. Or they think of the later like Starlight Coupe, which is the super swoopy looking vehicle. But this is a vehicle that they also made, the Studebaker pickup truck. These have been successful in land speed racing at Bonneville because they fit in the full-size truck class, because it's obviously not a compact truck, but it has much less frontal area than the other trucks that people run, which tend to be like a, 88 kind of Chevy truck. And not only that, but those things are super stylish. Ooh, Dodge truck. This one, having 4 headlights, means that it is pre-mid-1965. In 1965, they had 2 different models of Dodge trucks. They had the ones with 4 headlights that have the grille that sort of swoops up like this. And in the middle of the year, they changed to the ones that only have 2 headlights, which I think are super cool. But either way, they both have this neat door handle. This is what a lot of people call the refrigerator type door handle, and they changed this in, let me think, I'm gonna say 1967. They went to a regular push button type handle, whereas this one uses the old style refrigerator door handle. I like these trucks a lot because they have much bigger cab room. There's much more leg room than the Fords and the Chevys of a similar era. Here's another dent side. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, I don't know anything about Volvos, but I know that I dig these things because they look a lot like a 5/8 version of a 46 to 48 Ford. One of those would be cool to have someday. What else can we do? Ooh, El Camino. I love El Caminos. I don't know why. They came out with them in 59, and they made them in 59 and 60, and then they stopped, and then they started again in 1964. Of course, it's a Chevrolet. In 1964 and 5 is a very similar body style. Then 66 and 7 is got a different sort of front clip, kind of like that. But then in 1968 through 1972, they came out with the cars that look essentially like this. Personally, I really like the 1968. This is a 1970 right here. And the reason that I know that is from this grille design. Once again, 4 headlights, upright center grille section. That's a 1970 model. What's curious about these though is that even though the front clip is different, the 68 to 72s are the same in this part of the body. And even though this is based on a Chevelle, as a matter of fact, this might even be a Malibu, they take a different front fender than a Chevelle. The El Camino and station wagon quarter panel has no bulge in it, whereas in 1970, and 71, 72, they went to a bulged front fender and a bulged quarter panel on the passenger car version of the Chevelle, but the El Camino and the station wagon takes a different, smoother front fender because they don't have that bulged quarter. So there's just a little bit of trivia on that for you. The frame on these are very, very similar to Chevelle, but let me think, but they have a flatter cross member in the back because of the way the bed is designed. Here's something neat. This is a 72 or 3 Chevelle, which I know because it's got the round tail lights like this. If I look at the front really quick, I can tell you if it's a, oh, I'm sorry, not 72 or 3. It's a 71 or 72. And I can tell you it's a 72 because the front marker light does not have a bar through it. In 71, the front side marker light, which is the orange thing on the corner, has a bar right through the middle of it, and then in 72, they didn't. So this is a 72. But the reason I walked over here is that it's got this cool dealer badge on it. Forever, since I was a teenager, I have loved collecting photos of dealer badges, and there's a bunch of them here in this yard. And I haven't collected the badges themselves because I don't like to take them off the car. I think they're cool even when they're broken and when they leave the outline of where the sun has bleached them and stuff. Sometimes I'll even go home and Google those dealerships and find out if they're still around, because to me there's sort of a history to it. There's a really, really cool one here in this yard that is called Ramblerland. I think that's what it's called, a Ramblerville, a Rambler Town or something like that. There's cool dealerships from back in the day. This is neat because, as you know, I've got a kink for flat-fendered Jeeps, which is what this is. And I happen to know that this is a World War II model. Why do I know that? Okay, a CJ2A flat fender starting in 1946 as a civilian model would have been the first with a tailgate. The military World War II models do not have a tailgate. The World War II models also have these toolboxes in the back right here. If you're really, really sharp, you'll also know that the button that opens the toolbox, the shape of this little indent in the body changed a couple of times on the Ford models because these are built by both Ford and by Willys. Most people know the story about how Willys was given the government contract to build these Jeeps during World War II, but they couldn't keep up and build enough of them, and so the government took the blueprints, gave them to Ford, said, you have to build these things. Henry Ford says, I really don't want to do that. They said, tough cookies, you got to do that. And so Ford made their own, and there's just a few small differences between them. The earliest Ford ones, called script bodies, have, they say Ford right here, but they were not allowed to do that, and so you don't find it very often. This is not a Ford script body. They would have been very, very early in the war. And so what Ford did is they said, we want to make this thing identifiable as one of our vehicles. And so they stamped a Ford script F on virtually every part of the entire vehicle. Check this out. Here's some right here. Very, very difficult to see. Maybe if I lick my hand and wipe it right there, you can see that pointing this way, like this would be the framing to look at it, that is a script F. There's another one right there. See the F stamped? Oh, that's an even better one. You can really see that. See the F on this grab handle? They stamped every single part to go, this is not a Willys part, might have been designed by them, but that is manufactured by Ford. And so this would be a 1941 to 1945 Ford GPW. The World War II models also had this deep gas tank in them that you won't see in the civilian models. Also the indents here for the shovel and axe kit that went on them. And also the civilian models don't have a glove box here like the World War II one does. So that's a super cool find. What else can we do free association on here? Dodge Dart, right here. This is a A-body. This would have been very similar to what they first came out with in 1967 for the Dart in the larger, boxier platform. And what's interesting is the quarter panels from here forward on them are the same from 1967 through I think 1976, but they're different back here because they use a different cap on the end of it when they went to the later models that had the federally mandated impact bumpers on them, and the cars got really ugly. This one is a 74, which I can just tell because of the trim on it. So there's a whole bunch of that in Detroit cars from the mid 70s where it's like, it's close to good, but not, because it started out as a really cool 60s or 70s design, and then it got wrecked by all the federal mandates for the 5-mile-an-hour impact bumpers and all of this stuff. Ooh, so Cameron Dustin is standing on a really cool van. This is a Ford early flat-faced van. The Dodge ones are kind of more popular, the Dodge A100 vans that are built this way. You can see they're completely flat on the front, and the engine, you can see through the window there, is right between the seats. They're almost like mid-engine. And you would think of this one as being an O'Connell line, but what makes it cool is because this is a full window van, when they initially sold these and attempted to sell them to regular passenger car type consumers, rather than selling them for commercial use, they changed the name of this model to the Ford Falcon van because they had been so successful with the Falcon car. You see the emblems on this thing say Falcon, and it has the Falcon engine and transmission in it. So that's just interesting point of marketing that they did with these things. In fact, see that door that's right behind the engine sitting in there with the light on it? It says Falcon right on it. Ooh, this is neat. Unfortunately, that is not a convertible. That is a hardtop with the top cut off. That is a 1965 Chevy Impala. To me, one of the coolest looking cars ever. I know it's a 65 because of the way the taillights are designed here. A 66 is very similar but doesn't have the 3 taillights like this. So here, maybe you can help settle an argument when you see this on social media. Finnegan thinks that full-size Chevy Impalas of the 60s are worthless, no one cares, no one builds them whatsoever, and that I'm insane for liking them. I think they're pretty cool. I really like a 67, I really like a 65. 68s are okay, 66s are okay. Not really into the 63 or 4, but we just built that blown big block version in 69, and I initially didn't like that body style, but with the blown big block, I'm really digging it. Okay, let's look at just a couple more cars here. This is a 1969 Mercury Cougar. So, the Cougar is the Mercury version of a Ford Mustang. It's the same underpinnings. They have a longer wheelbase. It's interesting, they actually have longer leaf springs in the back in order to stretch the wheelbase, which they did for like smoother ride quality and stuff like that. Other than that, underneath, it is just a Mustang. And the body styles of them sort of follow the years of the original Mustangs. Obviously, the Mustang came out in 64.5, ran to 1966 before the first big body style change in 1967. That's also when Mercury launched the Cougar, is in 1967. The 1967 and 8 look very similar. Just like the Mustang went slightly larger in 1969, so did the Cougar. That's what this is, a 69. You can tell the difference between the 69 and the 70 because the 70 has a large center right here in the grille. It sort of sticks out more. It's integral with the hood. It's, in my opinion, not quite as attractive. This thing also, because it is a 69, it has the Windsor engine in it instead of the Cleveland, because in 1970 they went to the Cleveland. I'm looking at this now, realizing that we might need parts off of it for the episode that we're shooting here later next week. This thing is also a convertible, which is super cool. Oh, this is a 66 or 67 Ford Fairlane. These are really cool looking cars. I bought one of these for Rob Canan at Hot Rod Magazine circa 1994 and 1995, and we painted the thing for a cover story, and I fell in love with that body style at the time. And, okay, here's what we'll end with. Here's kind of what Finnegan is dreaming of doing these days. He wants a, somewhere in the early 60s, Cadillac Coupe de Ville, gotta be a two-door, and he wants to put his twin-turbo boat motor in it and turn one of these into a full-on race car and run it at the standing mile, which is pretty nutso. But I approve. Maybe you'll see that someday on Roadkill. Meanwhile, this has been Junkyard Free Association craziness with Freiburger on Roadkill Extra. If you need more Roadkill Extra, go sign up for the 30-day free trial right now.